Hari Bol. All glories to assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to assembled devotees.
Na.
All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13. Dhritarashtra quits home. Text 55. Vijnanatmani samyojya kshetragye pravilapyatam brahmanyatmanam adhare ghatambaram ivambare. Vijnanatmani samyojya kshetragye pravilapyatam brahmanyatmanam adhare ghatambaram ivambare. Vijnanatmani samyojya kshetragye pravilapyatam brahmanyatmanam adhare ghatambaram ivambare. Please chant.
Vijnanatmani samyojya kshetrajye pravilapyatam brahmanyatmanam adhare gatambaram ivambare.
Vijnanatmani samyojya kshetrajye pravilapyatam brahmanyatmanam adhare ghatambaram ivambare.
Hare Krishna. Vijnanatmani sanyojya kshetragne pravilapyatam brahmanyatmanam adhare katambaram ivambare. Hare Krishna.
Vijnanatmani samyojya kshetrajne pravilapyatam brahmanyatmanam adhare ghatambaram ivambare.
Hare Krishna. Brahmatmani samyoga khetragne prabhilapyatam brahmani atmanam adhare katavaram ivambare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, okay, Mata. Vijnanatmani samyojya kshetragne pravilapyatam brahmani atmanam adhare ghatambaram ivambare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Vijnanatmani samyojya kshetrage pravilapyatam brahmanya atmanam adhare katambaram ivambare.
Anyone else? Okay. You can do word translation. Vijnana, purified identity. Atmani, in intelligence. Samyojya, perfectly fixing. Kshetragye, in the matter of the living being. Pravilapya, merging. Tam, him. Brahmani, in the supreme. Atmanam, pure living being. Adhare, in the reservoir. Ghata ambaram, sky within the block. Iva, like. Ambare, in the supreme sky. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Dhritarashtra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with intelligence and then merge into the Supreme Being with knowledge of his qualitative oneness as a living entity with the Supreme Brahman. Being freed from the blocked sky, he will have to rise to the spiritual sky. I'll read that again. Dhritarashtra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with intelligence and then merge into the Supreme Being with knowledge of his qualitative oneness as a living entity with the Supreme Brahman. Being freed from the blocked sky, he will have to rise to the spiritual sky. Purport. The living being, by his desiring to lord it over the material world and declining to cooperate with the Supreme Lord, contacts the sum total of the material world, namely the Mahat Tattva. And from the Mahat Tattva, his false identity with the material world, intelligence, mind, and senses is developed. This covers his pure spiritual identity. By the yogic process, when his pure identity is realized in self-realization, one has to revert to the original position of amalgamating the 5 gross elements and the subtle elements, mind and intelligence, into the Mahat Tattva again. Thus, getting freed from the clutches of the Mahat Tattva, he has to merge in the existence of the Super Soul. In other words, he has to realize that qualitatively he is non-different from the Super Soul. And thus, he transcends the material sky by his pure identical intelligence, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity, which was attained by Dhritarashtra by the grace of Vidura and the Lord. The Lord's mercy was bestowed upon him by his personal contact with Vidura, and when he was actually practicing the instructions of Vidura, the Lord helped him to attain the highest perfectional stage. A pure devotee of the Lord does not live on any planet of the material sky, nor does he feel any contact with material elements. His so-called material body does not exist, being surcharged with the spiritual current of the Lord's identical interest. And thus, he is permanently freed from all contaminations of the sum total of the Mahat Tattva. He is always in the spiritual sky, which he attains by being transcendental to the 7-fold material coverings by the effect of his devotional service. The conditioned souls are within the coverings, whereas the liberated soul is far beyond the cover. Om Ajnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagra Jatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deena Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vijnanatmani Samyojya Kshetragye Pravilapyatam Brahmanyatmanam Adhare Ghatambaram Ivambare. It's a very philosophical shloka. Let me say more, very technical, right? Technical shloka. How the mechanics of how the soul is once again going back to the Supreme Lord. So let's understand the context first. So this is Narad Muni speaking to Yudhishthir Maharaj. Yudhishthir Maharaj, when he was experiencing the loss of his uncle Dhritarashtra, both uncles actually, Vidura, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, and he was blaming himself, thinking that maybe they must have committed, they must have drowned in the Ganga. At that time, Narad Muni appeared there and instructed Yudhishthir Maharaj not to worry about anyone. Everyone is brought together and separated by the Lord's arrangement. So you don't hold yourself responsible for that. And then Narad Muni is actually foretelling what is going to happen. It may sound like all this has already happened, but Narad Muni is telling the future that your uncle Dhritarashtra, he has left and he's gone to this place called Saptasrota, and there, he has taken baths, or he's taking bath right now. That means this is going to happen, right? He's taking bath 3 times a day, and he's fasting, just drinking water, giving up solid foods, and focusing his mind on spiritual subjects, and gradually withdrawing his mind from the material objects. So the process that he has followed, the Ashtanga Yoga process, we saw that in the past couple of verses, how he was, his yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, and ultimately samadhi. So the preliminary processes, right, up to dharana, he was going to perfect all those. So then today's verse we are seeing, so what is the result of practicing this Ashtanga Yoga process? So the shloka says, Dhritarashtra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with intelligence and then merge into the Supreme Being with knowledge of his qualitative oneness. So, Srila Prabhupada is going from the very beginning. So, we know in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we study how creation takes place. How does creation take place? First, what is the cause for the living entities coming to this material world? So there is creation on a universal scale, but also for the each individual. He's also coming here and he's accepting a material body. He's coming into this, he's getting entangled by this material atmosphere. So it is happening in stages, right? Step by step. So what is the first step? Why did he even come to this material world? He came here to desiring to lord it over the material world. And he has, Prabhupada says, declined to cooperate with the Supreme Lord. So the Lord is the enjoyer and we are meant to serve him. That is our constitutional position. So when we cooperate with the Lord's enjoyment, that is our natural position. Instead of cooperating with the Lord, we declined. So then naturally, now he's desiring to enjoy, to be the enjoyer himself. So he comes to this material world. So when he comes to this material world, how does it happen? So first of all, the material universe has to be created, right? So this universe is consisting of 7 layers. So even before that, first, the Lord is summoning his Kala Shakti, time. The beginning of creation, the Lord glances on Prakriti, and when the Lord is glancing on Prakriti, Kala is also summoned, and then from there creation begins. So how does it start? The 3 modes are there. The Prakriti is also already there in the form of a cloud, consisting of all the elements in their seed form, in their dormant form. So the modes are also there in equilibrium. Equilibrium means they are not acting now, they're just stable. So by the Lord's glance on Prakriti, the modes become agitated, they are activated. And then the Lord is impregnating Prakriti with all these conditioned souls who are desiring to lord it over the material nature. He's impregnating Prakriti by his glance. So that Prakriti, now consisting of all these living entities, is called Pradhana. And then the sum total of material energy is created, called Mahat Tattva. So Mahat Tattva consists of everything that is needed. It is the activated state consisting of the living entities also. So that is Mahat Tattva. In the Mahat Tattva, the first thing is, now the 3 modes are also activated in Mahat Tattva. So first thing that is created is false ego. False ego in the mode of goodness is creating mind and the demigods. Next, false ego in the mode of passion is creating intelligence and the senses. Senses, you have working senses and you also have knowledge acquiring senses. Then false ego in ignorance is creating the gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and the sense objects, form, touch, sight, like this. And then after all these are created, now individually also the living entities are also, their body is formed, right? So the universe is now consisting of these 7 layers, consisting of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and of course false ego is that which is not, right? The false identity, right? I am so and so. So that's really not counted as a layer, but that's also there. So this total universe is covered by this material sky, which has these 7 layers. And the living entity is now the jiva in his material situation, is in this universe now. And what is his consciousness, he forgets his original position. What is his original position? He is a servant of the Supreme Lord. And now in this material world, he has his designation. I am this, I am that. This is my body. This is my position. I like this. I hate that. This is my friend. That is my enemy. This is my nationality. All these misconceptions. So, as we read in the past few verses in the purports, the yoga process is meant, Srila Prabhupada says, it is meant to forget all these material designations and to once again come back to our original constitutional position. So the first paragraph of this purport is explaining the Ashtanga process. Ashtanga process. How it is done mechanically, right? You actually fast, right? You minimize your eating, fast as much as possible, taking bath 3 times a day, and you control your mind, right? And you try to bring your mind, fill your mind with thoughts of spiritual subject matters. And then you, by this practice, you gradually become free from all material objects. This is the process of Ashtanga Yoga. And then, as we read in this verse, when the living entity comes out of his false identification with this body, what is the first realization? I'm actually not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not this intelligence, I'm a spirit soul, right? So he, first of all, he sees his identity as a spirit soul, and then he has to go further. Then there is the supreme soul, Paramatma, because sometimes they stop at that level, right? You come, you understand, I'm not this body, I'm the soul. Even when you're doing Ashtanga Yoga, when you realize yourself in the heart, you don't see further that there's 2 people there. There's myself and there's Paramatma in the heart. Without seeing that, you say that I am that supreme. Aham Brahmasmi. You stop at that. But that's not perfection. You have to go even further beyond that. There's actually 2 in the heart. There is myself and there is Paramatma. So the next stage is to see the qualitative identity with the Supreme Lord. What is qualitative identity? We are actually separate. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetanam ekojo bahunam yo vidhadati kamam. He is also a living entity like me, but he is the master, I am the servant. He is Vibhu and I am Anu. He is unlimited and I am limited. That difference is there quantitatively. But qualitatively, I am one with him. So that qualitative identity, he realizes with Paramatma. And then what is the next step? Because you also see that he is the supreme, then you actually engage in his devotional service. You have to begin rendering devotional service. Just like a part of the body, see, this finger, when it is separated from the body, what is the value of that finger? Right? So when I connect this finger with the body once again, then I work for the body. I take some food and I put it in the mouth. And when I feed, then I'm also getting nourishment. The finger is also getting nourishment. So similarly, connecting with the Supreme, being one in mission, that is called qualitative identity. The Lord is the enjoyer. He is meant to enjoy, and let me become an instrument of his enjoyment. When I do this, then that is quality. We are one. We are one. He is enjoying and I am facilitating that. I am becoming an instrument for his enjoyment. This is devotional service. So, through the Ashtanga process, Dhritarashtra Maharaj and Prabhupada is saying this is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity. To be engaged in the transcendental loving service is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity. So, how did Dhritarashtra Maharaj, how was he able to come to this point? That is important. So it really depends on, like last Saturday or maybe the Saturday before, Sonia Mataji was saying that what I understood is association is crucial. That's most important. So it all depends on who we associate with. If we come in the association of a Brahmavadi, I may end up stopping at Brahman realization. I won't go beyond because that's the type of association I got. Dhritarashtra got the association of Vidura. So therefore, and bhakti comes only through devotees. The Lord, this is the Lord's system. He will give us bhakti through his devotees. Because Dhritarashtra came in contact with Vidura, therefore Krishna has bestowed his mercy on Dhritarashtra. And that is the initial mercy. And then because he actually carried out, followed the instructions given by Vidura, therefore he got the highest perfection. So the Lord bestowed the highest perfection when he followed the instructions of the spiritual master. So you get initial mercy. Mercy is available to everyone. But why everyone does not progress at the same speed? Because it is up to us how we are able to take that mercy. Taking that mercy means applying that instruction in our life. So Dhritarashtra got perfection by carrying out the instruction of Vidura. So once again, just the first paragraph, just one more time. So this is the whole creation process. Yes, from Mahat Tattva, false ego, then senses, intelligence, mind, they are created. And then the living entity is trying to enjoy with his senses, this world, right? Mind, intelligence, senses, he's trying to enjoy. So through yoga process, what is happening? The reverse activity is happening. That's what we are reading here. So he's amalgamating, Dhritarashtra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with intelligence and then merge into the Supreme Being with knowledge of his qualitative oneness. So after he understands that I am a part and parcel of the Supreme, what does he do? Now he has to do the reverse process. So the individual, so my body consists of earth, water, fire, air, ether. So the earth portion will have to be mixed with the universal earth. Water portion with universal water, like that. So he's gradually freeing himself from all the material things in which he is entangled. Similarly, the mind and intelligence with universal mind, universal intelligence. In this way, whatever was taken from Mahat Tattva initially for forming this particular body, the yogi, by his power, is once again putting them all back in the Mahat Tattva. That's what is happening. Amalgamating. He's bringing all these things and once again putting them back, returning them to the material world. And what is remaining now? Just the individual soul is remaining. So now what does the individual soul do? He sees his qualitative identity with the Supreme Lord. And then he's going higher and higher. Brahman realization, and then Paramatma realization, and ultimately he realizes Bhagavan. So here there's one more word called Ghatambaram. Ghata, Ambaram. Ambaram means sky. Ghata means pot. So you see, there is a pot. Is there sky in the pot? Yes, there is space. In the pot, there is space. And then there is space, the universe also. I mean, the sky is there outside. and in the pot also there is sky. So in one sense, you can say this is the sky in the pot and this is the sky outside. Actually, it is only one. They are not separate. Like there is Supreme Lord and there is also Paramatma in each and every living entity. So now localized Paramatma, you realize Paramatma in my heart. But actually, who is this Paramatma? There is also, like you have Karanodakashaya Vishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, I'm realizing within my heart. But then, so that's what he is doing. So he's going from his little closed situation, he's opening up, leaving everything, and then going to the Supreme, like that. So ultimately, he reaches Bhagavan. And when he reaches Bhagavan, what is he doing? He engages in transcendental loving service of Bhagavan. This is the process of Ashtanga Yoga. Now, what is Prabhupada saying? In Bhakti, what do we do in Bhakti? A pure devotee of the Lord does not live on any planet of the material sky. This is very interesting. So in Bhakti, it's not that Ashtanga Yoga is not Bhakti. So the goal is the same. One thing that should be understood is the goal is the same. It just depends on what path you're taking. So you can take Jnana path, right? Like you have Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga, you analyze, analytically you analyze what is this world and this and that, and ultimately you come to, in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita we read, by Sankhya Yoga, you understand who is the source of all this. And again, what is the culmination? Ultimately, when you understand, like there is a tree and there is root. So there's a scientist who's trying to understand, where does this tree begin? So he'll dig, dig, dig. Where is the tree getting its nourishment? It's coming from the roots. After he finds out, what does he do? He has to water the roots so that the tree will grow well. What does a devotee do? He hears from his father, oh, when you pour water, the tree will grow nicely. He doesn't do the research, where the roots are, how it is working, what are the cells. He just goes and pours water on the root. Is the result the same or not? Same, right? Ultimately, after all that research, you have to water the root. And then the tree will grow. Then you will get your flowers and fruits. So similarly, the goal is important, whether you take to Sankhya path, or you take yoga, Ashtanga Yoga path, or you're taking Bhakti Marga, the goal is important. The purpose of all this is you want to transcend the material world and you want to understand the Supreme Person. And after you understand, in that also there is different, there's partial understanding and complete understanding. When you understand, the ultimate understanding is to understand Vrindavan Krishna. And then there are various levels below that also. Depending on the type of association I get, that's how high I will go. If I associate with a Jnani, then I'll go to a certain level. If I associate with Ashtanga Yogi, whose goal is, or if I associate with a devotee whose goal is Vaikuntha, then if I have such a spiritual master, then that's where I will go. So really it is all about the association that we get. And then, so whichever path you take, the goal is to reach the absolute truth. Ultimately, everyone wants to reach the absolute truth. But within that also, there is perfect, more perfect, and most perfect. The ultimate understanding is understanding Krishna. So Dhritarashtra is so fortunate. So what I was saying is, so he adopted this Ashtanga Yoga process. Dhruva Maharaj also adopted Ashtanga Yoga process. What was the goal of Ashtanga Yoga process? It was taught by Narad Muni. Of course, that was a different time. Satya Yuga. Satya Yuga, people were advanced, so they would take to Ashtanga Yoga process. But the goal is, he saw Bhagavad Sakshatkar. He got darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, Ant bhala to sab bhala, they say in Hindi, right? If you reach the destination, then whichever way you go, that's important. You have to come to the right destination. But this is such an arduous process, such a difficult, tedious process, isn't it? How advanced a person has to be, like there's Bhishma Panchaka now going on. Yes. So there are different levels of Bhishma Panchaka. Some people do Bhishma Panchaka by simply taking Havishya. Havishya means they take some rice and moong dal, that's all, like that. And someone else, they will actually take, the Panchagavya, right? One day you take milk, one day you take Gomutra, like that. 5 days, different things you take. That's all. That day only that much, nothing else. Each item on each day, like that. Some people only drink water for 5 days, nothing else. So there are different levels of fasting that one adopts. I forgot why I was saying this. I got carried away. So anyway, I'm saying difficulty level. Yes. So this process of Ashtanga Yoga, so I'm saying there are different levels. One is more difficult, one is not, depending on your advancement, right? Somebody who is able to do, not everyone is able to follow the same strictness, right? Nevertheless, according to our ability, that much we will follow, right? But what is the purpose, ultimate purpose of whatever we do? Is it about how strictly you're doing, or how little you're eating, therefore you are better, and someone who's eating some grains, he's lower than you? Is that the point? What is the goal of the fasting? Tell me. What is the goal of fasting? Please.
To reach the Supreme Personality.
Or in other words,
liberation, love of God.
Yeah. So to please Krishna.
To please Krishna.
Words. Yes. So when we fast, what is the whole purpose of what we are doing? We want to please Krishna by this endeavor. It may be bringing a flower, it may be offering obeisances, it may be fasting, but at the end of the day, we want to please Krishna by this endeavor. According to my capacity, I am doing something, but my goal is to please Krishna. We cannot calculate in material terms. Somebody is only drinking water, so therefore he's pleasing Krishna more. You cannot say that. So this Ashtanga Yoga process is very difficult, no doubt. It is very difficult. But just because this is very difficult, it's going to give you higher benefits. Is that how we should think? No, it's not like that. So Bhakti Yoga, in Bhakti Yoga, what is Bhakti Yoga? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. So 9 processes of devotional service. So when you're doing Shravanam, Kirtanam, what is happening? We are engaging our senses in the service of the Lord from day one. What is an Ashtanga Yogi doing? First, he's trying to pull away his senses from this world because they're completely absorbed. So he has to, it's a very difficult process. Try to control your mind. Sit down and try controlling your mind. See how long you're able to do it. It's very difficult, but nevertheless, he really, strains himself, puts his body through a lot of penance and austerity to come to that level of, focusing the mind on the Supreme. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga, you simply engaging your senses. You are eating now, you are eating then also. But still that becomes spiritual activity. You don't have to stop. You don't have to starve yourself. You understand? So Bhakti Yoga is a very easy process. Nevertheless, it gives you the same benefit or even better than Ashtanga Yoga. So let's just read the second paragraph once again. Srila Prabhupada is saying, a pure devotee of the Lord does not live on any planet of the material sky, nor does he feel any contact with material elements. Of course, here we are talking about a pure devotee. So we should always remember devotional service, there is sadhana bhakti, there is bhava bhakti, there is prema bhakti, and even below sadhana bhakti also, right? You have karma mishra bhakti, jnana mishra bhakti. So there are different levels of bhakti. Nevertheless, they are all bhakti at different levels, but still it is bhakti. Bhakti means what? Bhakti means there is connection with the Supreme. There is connection with the Supreme. Activities that are done for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. That is bhakti. And there is different levels, different grades in bhakti. So, depending on my level, to that extent, I may be free from material entanglement. So, the process is powerful, but how far I am able to take it? So here what Srila Prabhupada is explaining, it's about a pure devotee who's 100% Krishna conscious. What is 100% Krishna conscious? Anya abhilashita shunyam, jnana karma dhyanavritam. So he's not doing no jnana, no karma. His bhakti is not covered by jnana or karma. He has no material desire, save and except pleasing Krishna. His every endeavor, every thought is meant for the pleasure of Krishna. This is pure devotional service. Such a devotee, even though he is in this material world, he's actually not in this material world. He's not in the material world. So he does not have to separately, like we saw in Dhritarashtra's case, he doesn't have to separate himself and then reach the spiritual platform. Prabhupada is saying he's already in the spiritual platform. He's always in the spiritual sky. That is why it is said that when a devotee leaves his body, a pure devotee leaves his body, instantly, like a lightning, he's there in the spiritual world. It's as if he was sleeping and then he wakes up, he's in the spiritual world. Like that. So, yeah, he's always in the spiritual world. So let's try to understand. What does it mean that he does not live on any planet or any place, any city? Because wherever he goes, wherever he sits, he's actually transforming that place into Vaikuntha. It doesn't remain material anymore. How? By his consciousness, by his Krishna consciousness. He's completely absorbed. He's living with Krishna 24/7, being engaged in Krishna's devotional service. He is always on the transcendental platform. So even when he goes to a material place, that place gets transformed into spiritual world. Therefore, he never lives in the material world. He doesn't live in the material world. And the next line says, nor does he feel any contact with material elements. Well, he has a body. We know the body is made of earth, water, fire, air, mind, intelligence, ego. How you're saying he is not contacting material elements? He is not contacting material elements because his body is not material anymore. This is not only in the case of a 100% pure devotee. Even as we are practicing devotional service, our body is gradually getting spiritualized. It's getting spiritualized. Just like, when you do, like, our present activities are preparing our next body. It's not that after I give up this body, all of a sudden the next body is created and I'm put into that. It's not like that. My body is already forming because my subtle body is changing. Based on my thoughts, based on my activities, my subtle body is already changing. My consciousness, my subtle body, let's say I'm supposed to become an animal in my next life. So my subtle body is already taking the form of that animal based on my activities now. Similarly, when we are rendering devotional service, by the power of that devotional service, our material body is already, getting spiritualized. It's getting spiritualized. Therefore, when a person is 100% Krishna conscious, when he's a pure devotee, he does not have a material body. His body is spiritual body. That's why he doesn't come in touch with material elements. His so-called material body does not exist. And he is surcharged with the spiritual current of the Lord's identical interest. So, as we discussed before, he doesn't have a separate agenda. He is in line with the Lord's plan. It's not like, sometimes you can superimpose, sometimes you see this dance, you see, I've seen in, the Chinese, they do this, but maybe they do in other places also. When a group of people are dancing, right? There may be 20 people lined up, and you just see the person in the front, right? There's actually 20, 30 people behind. And even when the person is making movements like this, if everyone is making the same movement, you don't see anyone else, you don't see separate things. You just see one person. You see? Why? Because they're all perfectly in unison, right? Their movements, everything is coordinated completely. Similarly, when the living entity is completely in line with the desire of the Supreme Lord, then he's in the spiritual world. He's not in the material world. In fact, he's acting just like Krishna by the power of his Krishna consciousness. We saw about Narad Muni. Narad Muni, Vyasdev said, Narad Muni, you are like Paramatma. You can see what is going on in others' heart. You can enter into anyone's heart like air or like light. You can go anywhere. You're like Paramatma. How? By dint of his worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by dint of his devotional service, now he's acting like the Supreme Lord, like Paramatma, right? Because he's in line with the Supreme Lord. So that's the whole point. So that is the highest perfection, actually. Then you become a perfect instrument of the Lord. The Lord can do wonderful things through you when you're in line with the Supreme Lord. The problem is when we bring our things in the middle, then we are not able to be the perfect representatives. So because he's surcharged with the spiritual current of the Lord's identical interest, therefore his body doesn't exist, material body doesn't exist, and is permanently freed from all contaminations of the sum total of Mahatattva. So he may be here, he may be anywhere, he's untouched, like a lotus leaf. Lotus leaf is in water, but it's never wet. A pure devotee can be in this world, anywhere, like Narad Muni. Narad Muni comes and goes whenever he likes. Why? How? Because he's a pure devotee. Nothing is binding him in this world. He can come and go. He can go to Vaikuntha, he can come here, he can travel and be untouched by the Mahatattva. So, the last line Srila Prabhupada is saying, yes, so the universe has these 7 coverings. For an ordinary person, or even for someone who's practicing this Ashtanga Yoga or Jnana Yoga, what do they have to do? They have to actually, it's not easy to break through these 7 layers and get free from this material universe. It's a very, very difficult, tedious process, almost impossible. Of course, there's a process to do it, but it's very, very difficult. There also, to get perfection, you will need bhakti. Some amount of bhakti is needed. Without bhakti, it's impossible. Impossible. So, the conditioned souls are within these coverings, whereas the liberated soul is far beyond the cover. And a pure devotee is always far, far beyond this covering, because he's living in the spiritual world. So, I will end there. Thank you very much. Any questions or discussions? I think everyone is trying to absorb.
It's a lot to absorb. So just to give us some tips to do. You tell us.
I've been telling all this while, Mataji. Now it's your turn.
But understanding this, now it's getting
How about everyone give me one point that you have got from today, whatever you heard, just one point, anything. It's always nice to have a discussion in the end.
That's true.
Anything that caught your attention. Yes, Kalpishpam.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Then what I learned is in the Bhakti Yoga, we should do all our activity to please the Lord.
Yes, yes. Whatever activity we do, we have to do to please the Lord. That is Bhakti Yoga. Correct. Pleasing the Lord. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. You actually have clarified it very nicely. And for me, listen, yesterday I heard your happy hour class, and they're all coming together. And that shloka, how much ever effort we put in, to that degree Krishna gives. And I can see, and it's very slow, but I can sometimes, it's, like they say, the tube light does go on, and it's like, I've been hearing this for so long. That's why I asked you yesterday, what does it mean to, because I say it, but to actually understand. And I'm starting to, again, like I said, not quite there, but I'm happy that I'm understanding. And the difference between Bhakti Yoga and it for a long time, I didn't understand, why is Krishna saying all these things. He's saying this will work and that will work and that will work. He doesn't say Karma Yoga is not the path or Jnana Yoga is not the path. But especially in this chapter, I think things are getting clarified. And, Dhritarashtra is following this. But the one thing that I was thinking is, you said association. Dhritarashtra had Vidura's association all along. I had also heard that every night he insisted on Vidura giving him some instruction. The instruction was there, but he wasn't accepting it or hearing it.
Yes. So that is there. We covered that in the class also, Mataji, about the rain cloud. You come in the association, but in spite of coming in the association, if you are not able to take it, it's because of our offenses. So the more a person, because sinful reactions, that's not a criterion at all. However big your sins, your pile of sins may be, with one shot, right? One holy name, all the sins can be cleared. Not just past, what I'm doing now, and what I may be doing in future also. That means, like Ajamil's case, in Ajamil's case, he committed sinful activities in the past. He was with the prostitute and he was plundering and all those things. But when he had his son, when the son was born, he named him Narayan, Namkarana ceremony. So when he chanted the name Narayan, all his sins were removed. Past sins were removed and future sins also were removed. But then we see he continued performing sinful activities after that also. But that once chanting of the holy name at the time of name giving ceremony had already cleared even the future sins that he may be committing in the future. So that is why at the final moment, he was able to call out to Narayan. The name of Narayan came on his lips and the Vishnu Dutas approached. So what I'm trying to say is, Ajamil didn't have any offenses. He had sins, but no offenses. So when you don't have offenses, once chanting the holy name of the Lord is sufficient. But when we have offenses, once chanting is not sufficient. You have to regularly, repeatedly keep chanting the holy name of the Lord. And then your offenses, they will all, they will certainly go away. The only thing is, Tivrena Bhakti Yogin. You have to really do it intensely. The more intensity with which you do, the sooner you will see that all your offenses are going out. Means proportionately you will see the taste for Krishna consciousness coming. Why some people, in spite of coming in the association, are not able to take to Krishna consciousness, or in spite of being in the association of nice devotees, they are still committing offenses, or Committing offenses also can be a reaction of past offenses, you see. So it's very, very, that's why we chant the 10 offenses, offense to the holy name. So if we are careful about those offenses, and if we are sincerely taking shelter of the holy name, then we will see very quick progress. But if we neglect the offenses, and what to speak of those which are already carrying, we already have. That's why in spite of chanting, we are not, actually it is clearing, but I'm not able to see that quick progress like Ajamil. Why I'm not getting Prema Bhakti right away? Because that should tell me, oh, I have offenses. Then what is the solution for me? I must just continue chanting. I must just continue chanting, and I must avoid offenses. That's all.
So the difference between sins and offenses.
Yes.
That is today's lesson, today's understanding.
Okay.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji, Chatterjee, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Yoga takes us to the real path and reminds us that we are the servant of Krishna. That is we reveal our true identity. And out of all yogas, Bhakti Yoga is the best.
Yes.
That is
Correct. Thank you. Yes, Prabhuji. Very nice. Okay. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, this is Revati Devi. Yeah, I didn't hear the full, but I just wanted to say one thing. Tell me if I'm right. If I'm wrong, please let me know that also. So Dhritarashtra associated with got association of Vidura,
Yeah.
and that led him to that stage, Samadhi stage. But I was reading in Bhagavatam, even though Dhritarashtra associated with Vidura, but he did not got Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
Because he was he made an offense toward Pandavas. Is that right?
Yes. Later on, after in the next coming verses, we will see after Dhritarashtra, so after he leaves, right?
Yes.
Vidura was simultaneously feeling happy and he was also feeling sad. So there Srila Prabhupada explains he was happy because Dhritarashtra, he became, at least, he was not caught in the material family life. His condition was very bad. So at least he was able to get liberated. But nevertheless, he was not able to take to pure unalloyed devotional service. So he was sad also. Of course, he was feeling separation from his brother, but he was sad because he was not able to take to. But here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying that he got the highest perfection. He engaged in the devotional service. So, yeah. So that's as much as I understand from this, Mataji. I mean, there may be more to it, but I'm not aware of that, beyond that. But at least he came to that point of rendering devotional service. You see, within devotional service also there are stages, right? So, yeah, he didn't become a devotee like Vidura, right? He didn't become like that. But yes, he committed offenses to the Pandavas. Yeah, that part I'm not sure, Mataji, that because of coming to the Pandavas, therefore he couldn't get bhakti. That part I'm not sure, Mataji. If anyone else knows more, you can please share with me.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. This came up on Thursday's class. I believe Sonia Mataji asked the question also, why then, we wouldn't just practice, why wouldn't Dhritarashtra then just practice bhakti? And Acharya Prabhu chimed in. He said, the upcoming verses, Srila Prabhupada comments on this, that because of his offenses, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but he said because of his offenses, he wasn't able to just come and practice bhakti exclusively and just meditate directly. And it kind of makes sense. He wasn't very devotionally inclined. He had the association of Krishna. Krishna was personally there, but he was just so consumed with making sure that the kingdom was going to be secured for his sons And whenever calamities happened and distress happened, the way the Pandavas reacted with, this is Krishna's mercy. The way Queen Kunti, she saw it as, oh, this is the mercy of the Lord. This was an opportunity to for Krishna to come save me. We don't see the same qualities arise with Dhritarashtra.
But I was thinking, because now that he actually finally accepted the instruction of Vidura. So yeah, to what extent he was convinced about the Lord, right? Bhakti, that we don't know. I was just looking at Srila Prabhupada's purport, the first paragraph, last two lines. Prabhupada says that the highest, becoming engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity, which was attained by Dhritarashtra. So that's why I was, thinking about that the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity is to engage in devotional service, and it was attained by Dhritarashtra by grace of Vidura, Prabhupada is saying, and the Lord. And then also he said, by actually carrying out the instructions of Vidura. So earlier he was not carrying out the instructions of Vidura, but now he did. He actually carried out the instructions of Vidura. But nevertheless, as we read later on, I remember this very distinctly. Vidura's feelings after Dhritarashtra, his body was burnt and everything. He was simultaneously feeling happy and sad also. So so he of course he didn't. I will just leave it at that until I get more clarification. Yeah.
It makes me also think that, so it seems his initial, so his impetus to go through this transformation was by the grace of Vidura, who basically just said, look, you're an old man, you've wasted your life, you've finally, the time has come, your body is failing, what are you doing? Like, wake up. He had that, like, so it was kind of like for his own
exactly correct.
Selfish. It was like liberation. Okay,
exactly correct.
I have to seek liberation because my life is over, so therefore I have to leave this world in a proper way. He wasn't necessarily seeking after devotional service, but we're all like that, right? We're all kind of in that same stage. If somebody gives us something, and somebody gives us Krishna consciousness at the beginning, four types of pious people come to Krishna. So we're all seeking after some type of self-interest in that. Okay, this will be good for me. I'll get some knowledge. I'll, live a better life. I'll be liberated. Whatever it may be. So but then the pure devotional spirit comes, or devotional spirit comes, and then pure devotion comes later under the guidance of a pure devotee. That's able to separate our own, the selfish desire for liberation to selfless service to Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji, very nice. So it's a relative term that compared to what he was before, yes, getting liberation, that is a perfectional stage. He got liberation and he was meditating on the Lord also, but we cannot say he was in love with the Lord and, he was like, so there's two types of, there's sakama and akama. Sakama means sakama bhakti and akama. Sakama means you have some desire, some motivation, even up to the point of getting liberated. That's also motivated bhakti. But that's not going to please the Lord. That means you can get liberation by that bhakti, but you won't be able to control the Lord by that bhakti. But when you perform akama bhakti, akama means no desire save and except the pleasure of the Lord. So as you very nicely brought it out, that was not his motivation. He was not doing all this to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was looking at more on the negative side, right? All the sufferings in this world and, let me get out of here. So that's also good. In one sense, it's also good, right? It's better than where he was before. It's, to get liberated. And also the description also, we are seeing how he got out of the layers of, we don't really talk about his bhava and his affection for the Lord. So yeah, so that certainly gives more clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. I was also reading this in the it's in a purport in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And in it's chapter text 30. I was looking at this because on Sunday we're doing the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita for the Sunday feast, and it talks about the Paramatma realization, because that the focus of the yogi is the Paramatma, as we know from here. And Srila Prabhupada writes, he says, in the case of a yogi who sees the Lord as Paramatma within the heart, the same applies. Such a yogi turns into a pure devotee and cannot bear to live for a moment without seeing the Lord within himself.
Lord Krishna never disappears from the sight of the devotee, nor does the devotee ever lose sight of the Lord.
No.
In the case of a yogi who sees the Lord as Paramatma within the heart, the same applies. So again, seeing Paramatma in what sense is also important, no? Like seeing, so Paramatma, what is the function of Paramatma? Of course, he is the Supreme Lord, but if you're seeing him only as Paramatma, then he is the one who's sanctioning your activities like that. You're not really having an active relationship with Paramatma, like Paramatma is my master, Paramatma is my son, Paramatma is my friend. That doesn't happen. There's no but there is this like Shanta type of thing, right? Like there's awe and reverence, Supreme Lord. But that rasa does not happen with Paramatma. That happens only with Bhagavan. Of course, it's different when a devotee is seeing the Lord in the heart. He's actually seeing Krishna in the heart. So therefore, he's having relationship with Krishna. So he's seeing, when he's seeing Paramatma, he's actually seeing, because who is Paramatma? Paramatma is also an aspect of Krishna only. Right. So one who has realized Krishna, he will only see Krishna everywhere. Depending on my level of advancement, that's what I will see. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. So that person is seeing Vasudeva everywhere, right? Like Paramatma, but he's seeing Krishna's form, Vasudeva. Everywhere he's seeing. Or Paramatma also, when you realize Paramatma in the heart, then yes, the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada is saying, such a yogi who's always seeing Paramatma in the heart turns into a pure devotee and cannot bear to live for a moment without seeing the Lord within himself. So again, that shift from yogi to bhakta will happen only when he comes in touch with a bhakta. So now he's in a very ripe stage. He's used to, he cannot stay without seeing Paramatma. But to get to the next step of, Bhagavan, then he will have to come in touch with a bhakta. So yes, he can go to the next stage. So he turns into a pure devotee. The next stage would be he turns into a pure devotee by coming in touch in the association of a devotee.
Thank you so much for that, for explaining that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. So the point I was just mentioning, it is in the same chapter, but later verse, 59th verse.
59th verse.
Yeah. So it's later. So I'm sorry, I just bought this point now. So.
No, Mataji, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is written like, you can later read, it's in 59th verse.
Yeah.
Purport by Prabhupada.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. But he was sorry that he could not make his brother turn into a pure devotee. That's the point. So
because of the
unhappy.
It's also written because of the offense, that part.
Next line says, this was not done by Vidura because of Dhritarashtra's being inimical to the Pandavas, who were all devotees of the Lord. An offense at the feet of a Vaishnava is more dangerous than offense at the lotus feet of the Lord. So Vidura was very liberal and bestowing mercy upon Dhritarashtra, but ultimately the result of mercy dependent on the will of the Lord. Okay. Yes, Mataji, thank you. So he got liberation only. It's clearly said here. So yes, so it goes in line with our discussion so far. You know, the points that Dronacharya Prabhu also brought up. It's about, so perfection, he got perfection. He got liberated, one level of perfection. Yes, he got liberated. Nevertheless, he didn't become a pure devotee because he committed offense to the Pandavas. Yes. So thank you, Mataji. Revati Mataji, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you.
Krishna. So we will end here. Any announcements, Guruji or Mataji?
Thank you very much, Mataji, for everybody's
I know.
lot of information.
Rama Prabhu is still here, so when he's here, he makes the announcements. I don't have any announcements, but again, I love to see the enthusiasm of all the devotees. You know, verses that are coming up. Everybody is anxious to discuss those points. I think. But thanks again, Mataji. It was a wonderful, wonderful discussion. Wonderful points to think about.
Always.
Yeah. So we will meet again tomorrow morning for Acharya Prabhu's class at 7:50 and Sunday feast program tomorrow.
Don Gopal Prabhu from Tuwako, he's going to be here for the Sunday feast program. So that's the only announcement that I have.
Thank you.
We'll give it again tomorrow. All right.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai.
Jai.
Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha.
Kripa Sindhuve Cha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,